"You don't belong in this seat." The words, sharp and cold, sliced through the cabin's low hum as the aircraft taxied toward the runway. In row 14, chaos had begun to bloom. Victoria Hartwell, a woman of 42 clad in an expensive cream blazer, occupied seat 14A with an unyielding grip on the armrests, as if they were her birthright. Her refusal to move was a silent, stubborn declaration. In the aisle stood two 9-year-old black girls, twins named Maya and Zara Thompson, their small forms trembling. Tears streamed down their faces as they held up their boarding passes, the papers shaking in their hands. The seat assignments were clear: 14A and 14B. "Please," Maya whispered, her voice choked with tears. "That's my seat." Victoria didn't even glance up from her phone. She scrolled with an air of practiced indifference, as if the child before her was nothing more than a ghost. "You need to move," Zara said, her voice firmer, protective. "That's my sister's seat." A flight attendant arrived, a man named Derek Sullivan, whose weary expression suggested he had already reached his limit for the day. The twins rushed to explain, thrusting their boarding passes toward him, but Derek barely gave them a look. His attention settled on the composed woman by the window. "Ma'am," he asked, "are you in your assigned seat?" Victoria looked up, her face a mask of innocence. "I needed the window for my anxiety," she said smoothly. "These girls were making a terrible fuss." Derek nodded, his decision made. He turned back to the twins, his voice now laced with impatience. "Girls, take the other seats. If you continue to be disruptive, you will be removed from this flight." The threat landed like a physical blow. Maya's breath hitched. She began to hyperventilate. Zara wrapped a protective arm around her sister, both of them now openly sobbing. They were children, being threatened for simply asking for what was rightfully theirs. Then, everything changed. A crackle of static filled the air, followed by the captain's calm, authoritative voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are returning to the gate. We have a situation on board that requires our immediate attention." The plane began a slow, deliberate turn. A flicker of alarm crossed Victoria's face. Derek froze in the aisle. Her eyes widened because what Victoria couldn't possibly know was that these two little girls were not just any children. They were Maya and Zara Thompson, and their surname was about to change everything. To understand the weight of this moment, the colossal scale of Victoria's mistake, we must go back 30 minutes. 30 minutes earlier, Chicago O'Hare International Airport was a river of hurried travelers. At gate B-17, two identical girls stood with their mother, their small shoulders squared with bravery. For Maya and Zara Thompson, this was their first time flying alone. Their mother, Dr. Angela Thompson, knelt before them, still in the blue scrub she'd worn for a 14-hour emergency surgery. She had driven straight from the hospital to see them off, and while exhaustion was etched into the lines around her eyes, it couldn't dim the fierce love within them. "Stay together," she instructed, her voice steady despite the emotion welling inside her. "Listen to the flight attendants. Call Grandma Rose the moment you land." She pulled them into a hug that felt like it could last forever. Maya, the quiet artist who dreamed of being an architect, buried her face in her mother's shoulder. Zara, the outspoken protector who wanted to be a doctor just like her mom, held on just as tightly. Angela reached into her bag and produced two small boxes. Inside lay matching necklaces, each with half of a heart charm that fit together perfectly. "You're never apart," she whispered, fastening one around each of their necks. "Even when you're apart." The girls touched the cool metal, a small smile breaking through their nervous tears. There was a story Angela wasn't telling them, a truth she had guarded to give them a normal life. 3 years earlier, their father, Marcus Thompson, a firefighter, had died running into a burning building to save a family trapped inside. He got them out, but he never made it out himself. The city called him a hero. His daughters just called him Dad, and they had grown up in the shadow of his absence. But there was more to his story. Before Marcus was a hero in a uniform, he was the heir to an extraordinary legacy. His family had left him an airline. That airline, kept in a trust for his daughters, was Skyline Airways. This very plane, the one they were about to board, was part of a company they owned. Marcus had founded it 40 years ago with a simple mission: to make air travel accessible and dignified for everyone. He had once faced the sting of discrimination himself while trying to fly, and he vowed to build something better. When he died, the airline passed into a trust for his girls. Two 9-year-olds were the owners of an entire airline. The daily operations were handled by a board of directors, and Angela had insisted on keeping their ownership a fiercely guarded secret. She wanted them to be Maya and Zara, not the Thompson heirs. The twins had no idea. Angela couldn't fly with them today. 3 more critical surgeries awaited her, children who needed her, lives she had to save. So she was sending her babies to Atlanta to visit their grandmother, who was recovering from a surgery of her own. "I love you both so much," she said, her voice finally cracking. "Your father would be so proud of how brave you are." One last hug, and then the gate agent called for unaccompanied minors. A kind woman named Patricia took their hands and led them down the jetway, the special lanyards around their necks marking them as children traveling alone. They were the first to board. A smiling flight attendant greeted them warmly and showed them to row 14, seats A and B. These weren't random seats. Row 14 was in premium economy, a section their father had personally designed with extra legroom, specifically to make families and children feel special. Maya pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide with excitement. Zara sat beside her, already pulling out the coloring books their mom had packed. They were nervous, yes, but this was an adventure. Meanwhile, back in the terminal, Victoria Hartwell was stewing. With designer sunglasses perched on her head and a Louis Vuitton carry-on in hand, the luxury real estate agent radiated fury. "First class sold out," she muttered, loud enough for those around her to hear. "I fly 50 times a year. This is unacceptable." She had demanded an upgrade, argued with the supervisor, and played every card she had, but the flight was full. She was stuck. In coach. As she finally walked down the aisle, she wrinkled her nose in disgust at the narrow seats and the ordinary families. This was not her world. She belonged in a realm of champagne and hot towels, not here with, she glanced around distastefully, regular people. Her seat was 14C, the aisle seat, right next to 2 little girls. Victoria's jaw tightened. She slammed her bag into the overhead bin and collapsed into her seat with a heavy sigh. She glanced at Maya and Zara, who were coloring quietly, and rolled her eyes. "Great," she muttered. Children. She had no idea she was sitting next to the owners of the very airline she was scorning. No idea that the man who built this airline did so to stand against the very entitlement she embodied. No idea that in 20 minutes her condescending attitude was about to cost her more than she could ever imagine. As the last passengers boarded, Victoria settled into her seat, the atmosphere in row 14 growing thick with her discontent. She sighed, a theatrical sound of suffering, as the twins whispered to each other about seeing Grandma Rose. They were being good, just as their mother had asked, brave, just as their father would have wanted. Victoria pulled out her phone and began typing, her thumbs jabbing at the screen. "Stuck next to children in coach," she texted her assistant. "This airline has really gone downhill." The girls tried to ignore the stream of complaints that followed. The seat was too narrow, there was no leg room, the indignity of it all. Zara leaned over to Maya. "Just ignore her," she whispered. "Mom says some people are just unhappy." Maya nodded, but her hand trembled slightly as she colored. 20 minutes after boarding, Zara needed to use the bathroom. "Come with me?" she asked her sister. Maya looked toward the tiny lavatory at the back of the plane and shrank a little. "Can you go by yourself? I'll be right here." Zara hesitated, but agreed. "Okay, I'll be really fast." She squeezed past Victoria, who made a great show of pulling in her legs with an annoyed huff. The moment Zara was gone, Victoria saw her chance. With calculated slowness, she unbuckled her seatbelt. "Excuse me," she said to Maya, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I need to get something from the window." Trusting and polite, Maya stood to let her pass. But Victoria didn't reach for a bag. She slid directly into seat 14A and clicked the seatbelt shut. Maya stared, confused. That's my seat." Victoria ignored her, her attention fixed on her phone. "Ma'am?" Maya's voice was small, uncertain. "My boarding pass says 14A." Finally, Victoria looked up, her eyes cold and dismissive. "I'm sitting here now. You can take the aisle." "But it's my seat," Maya repeated, tears welling in her eyes as she clutched her boarding pass. Victoria's voice turned to ice. "I am an adult. You are a child. I'm staying here. Move along." Maya was frozen, tears now streaming down her cheeks. She had been taught to respect adults, but this felt so wrong. When Zara returned, she took in the scene in an instant. Her sister crying in the aisle, the woman now occupying her window seat. A fire ignited within her. "Get out of my sister's seat," she demanded, her voice ringing with righteous anger. Victoria didn't even look up. "I don't think so." "You can't just steal someone's seat," Zara insisted. "I didn't steal anything, sweetheart," Victoria said coolly. "I'm sitting here now. Deal with it." Frustration boiling over, Zara reached up and stabbed the flight attendant call button 3 times. Passengers began to turn and stare. After what felt like an eternity, Derek Sullivan appeared, his expression already soured. He saw 2 crying children and a calm, collected woman and made a swift, silent judgment. "What's the problem here?" he asked, his tone clipped with annoyance. The girls began explaining at once, their words tumbling over each other. Derek held up a hand. "Girls, stop. It's just a seat." He turned to Victoria with a sympathetic smile. "I'm so sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. Are you comfortable?" "I'm fine now, thank you," Victoria replied, the picture of composure. "I just needed the window seat for my anxiety. I get very nervous in aisle seats." It was a blatant lie, delivered with flawless confidence. Derek nodded. "Of course, ma'am. I understand." The twins stared in disbelief. "But she's lying!" Zara cried out, her voice cracking. "She stole it!" Derek waved away the boarding pass Maya was still holding out. "Listen, girls, the flight is full. There are no other seats. Take the ones you have, and be grateful you're flying at all." Be grateful. The words struck Maya like a slap. Her breath began to catch in her throat, coming in short, sharp gasps. Zara saw her sister struggling and wrapped an arm around her, but her gaze remained locked on Derek. "This isn't fair. You didn't even look at our tickets." His expression hardened. "Young lady, if you don't calm down and take your seats, I will have you removed from this flight. Is that what you want?" Seeing her advantage, Victoria adopted a look of wounded dignity. "Sir, these children have been disruptive since they boarded. I was just trying to calm my nerves, and now they're attacking me." Derek nodded, his contempt for the girls now clear. "I understand completely, ma'am," he said, shooting them a final, disapproving glare. Some parents just don't teach their children proper behavior. That final, dismissive judgment shattered what little composure Maya had left. Her breathing became ragged. Her small body began to shake. Right there in the aisle, she collapsed into a full-blown panic attack. Zara held her sister tighter, her own tears finally breaking free, hot against her cheeks. "Look what you did," she whispered, her voice trembling. "She has anxiety. You're making her sick." "We didn't do anything wrong." Derek crossed his arms, his professional patience worn thin. "Young lady, this is your final warning. Sit down in the available seats immediately or I will have you both removed from this aircraft. Do you understand me? I will not ask again." 2 9-year-old girls, alone and terrified, threatened with being thrown off a plane because they had asked for what was rightfully theirs. But they were no longer alone. Other passengers were watching now, and some of them refused to remain silent. A man 2 rows back rose to his feet. Michael Chen, an accountant from Chicago, had watched the entire ugly scene unfold, and his face was flushed with a quiet rage. "Excuse me," he said, his voice loud enough to carry through half the cabin. "That flight attendant is completely out of line. I've been sitting here since they boarded. Those children were in those seats. That woman," he pointed, "moved into the window seat the second the other girl went to the bathroom. I saw it with my own eyes." Across the aisle, another figure stood. Jennifer Rodriguez, a 3rd-grade teacher, recognized the bullying tactics of the powerful against the small. "This is discrimination," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "Plain and simple. Someone needs to call the captain right now. This is completely inappropriate, and that flight attendant is enabling it." But a wave of support was met by a current of annoyance. A few rows up, an older man sighed with theatrical exasperation. "Oh, for heaven's sake, can everyone just calm down? It's not worth all this drama over a seat. Let the kids sit somewhere else so we can get going." Another passenger called out, "I paid good money for a peaceful flight. Can we please just resolve this and take off? Some of us have places to be." That's when the phones came out. Not to text or scroll, but to record. A constellation of small, glowing screens, all pointed toward row 14. They saw the injustice. They saw 2 little black girls being mistreated by an entitled white woman and a dismissive flight attendant who had already decided they didn't matter. Derek saw the phones. He saw the red recording dots, and a different kind of heat bloomed in his face. "All passengers must comply with crew member instructions," he announced, his voice straining. "Recording crew members without permission is against airline policy. I'm going to need everyone to put their phones away. Now." No one did. If anything, more phones were raised, a silent chorus of witnesses. They knew that without evidence, this story would evaporate, the word of 2 children against 2 adults. They all knew how that story usually ended. The cabin was a pressure cooker. Passengers were arguing, the twins were sobbing, and Derek was losing control. It was then that the senior flight attendant arrived. Her name was Christine Morrison. At 55, she moved with a calm authority that 23 years at Skyline Airways had forged. She'd been hired by Marcus Thompson himself, had watched the airline grow from a small charter into something special. One look at the chaos in row 14 told her something had gone terribly wrong. She saw Derek, defensive. She saw the woman, smug, in the window seat. And she saw 2 little girls crying in the aisle, one of them hyperventilating. "What's going on here?" Christine's voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise with an authority Derek's had lacked. The twins tried to explain, their words stumbling over sobs. But this time, something was different. Christine listened. She knelt slightly, her eyes focused, and took the boarding passes from Maya's trembling hand. She studied them, her gaze sharp. Seats 14A and 14B, clearly assigned to Maya Thompson and Zara Thompson. She looked at their faces. Identical twins, 9 years old, tears streaking their cheeks, wearing the lanyards of unaccompanied minors. Then she looked at the woman in the window seat, Victoria, scrolling on her phone without a hint of remorse. Christine's expression hardened. She had seen this kind of casual cruelty before, too many times, but not on her flight, not if she could help it. She turned to Victoria, her voice professional but laced with steel. "Ma'am, I need you to return to your assigned seat. According to their boarding passes, these children are in 14A and 14B. Your seat is 14C. Victoria's confidence, bolstered by Derek's earlier support, had solidified into arrogance. She wasn't moving. "Your colleague already told me I could sit here," she said, an edge of indignation in her tone. "I explained that I have severe anxiety. I need a window seat. An aisle seat triggers my panic attacks." Christine glanced at Derek, who avoided her gaze. Victoria pressed on, her voice rising. "These children have been making a scene from the moment they boarded. Loud, disruptive, and frankly rude. I was just trying to find a little calm, and now I'm being attacked for a medical condition." She was on a roll now, certain she would win. "And frankly," Victoria paused, looking directly at Maya and Zara with an expression of pure disdain that made several nearby passengers flinch. "Frankly, these children and their kind always cause problems on flights. This is exactly why I usually fly first class." The cabin fell into a shocked, cavernous silence. Their kind. She had said it out loud, where dozens of people could hear, where multiple phones were recording. Gasps rippled through the rows. Michael Chen shook his head in disgust. Jennifer Rodriguez's eyes went wide with disbelief. The word struck the twins like a physical blow. Their kind. As if they were less than human. As if they didn't belong. Christine's face transformed. The professional mask vanished, replaced by a cold, controlled fury. She had worked for Marcus Thompson. She knew why he'd started this airline, because he had faced this exact poison, had been treated like he didn't belong. He had built this airline so that no one, ever, would feel that way on one of his planes. And now it was happening to his own daughters, on his airline. Christine didn't argue, she didn't reason. She turned on her heel and walked with a purposeful stride straight toward the cockpit. Inside, Captain David Harrison was running his pre-flight checklist. A veteran pilot of 30 years, he'd been with Skyline for 15 of them, hired personally by Marcus Thompson. They had been friends, real friends who grabbed beers after flights and talked about their families. When Marcus died running into that burning building, David had been a pallbearer at his funeral. A sharp knock came at the door. "Captain Harrison?" Christine's voice was taut. "We have a serious situation in the cabin. I need you to see this." David opened the door. The look on Christine's face told him everything. This was not a small problem. "Pull up the cabin cameras," she said quietly. "Row 14, and turn on the audio." David brought the feed up on the monitor. He watched the last 20 minutes unfold in stark, damning detail. Victoria sliding into the seat, Maya's tears, Derek's cold dismissal, the threats. And then he turned on the audio and heard it. These children and their kind always cause problems. His hands tightened on the controls, knuckles turning white. He pulled up the passenger manifest. Seats 14A and 14B, Maya Thompson and Zara Thompson, unaccompanied minors. Thompson. His eyes widened. He clicked on their profiles. Mother, Dr. Angela Thompson. Father, Marcus Thompson, deceased. Marcus's daughters. These were Marcus's little girls. He had seen them at the funeral, two small, heartbroken figures placing flowers on their father's casket. Now they were on his plane, being terrorized on the very airline their father had built to protect people from this hate. A wave of fury and shame washed over him. He had failed his friend. Captain Harrison picked up the radio, his voice steady, but with a core of steel. Tower, this is Skyline 447. We're aborting takeoff and returning to the gate. We have a passenger situation that requires an immediate law enforcement response. Then he switched to the cabin intercom. His voice filled every speaker, clear, authoritative, and absolutely final. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Harrison speaking. We are returning to the gate. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. I assure you this is necessary. The plane began to turn. The engines changed their pitch. Victoria's face drained of color, her smug confidence evaporating into confusion, then dawning fear. What? Why are we going back? Derek stood frozen in the aisle, his face ashen. Returning to the gate meant security. It meant reports. It meant consequences. Maya and Zara held each other, still crying, but a tiny spark of hope flickered within their fear. Someone had listened. Someone was doing something. The passengers with phones now aimed them directly at Victoria. Michael Chen leaned forward, his voice a low growl. You're done. Jennifer Rodriguez whispered to her neighbor. She just destroyed her life on camera. Another passenger muttered, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Through the windows, the flashing lights of airport security vehicles could be seen racing across the tarmac, converging on their gate. Victoria's hands were shaking now. She looked around and saw only hostile, disgusted faces. Derek stood paralyzed, his career flashing before his eyes. And in the aisle, Maya and Zara Thompson held each other, their matching heart necklaces pressed together, and waited. The plane docked, and airport security boarded immediately. Officers moved with calm efficiency, separating the parties involved. Victoria was escorted to the front, the twins taken to the back with Christine. Witnesses were asked to remain. In a sterile airport security office, Victoria met Elizabeth Parker, the airport manager, a poised African-American woman of 50, had already been briefed. She had watched every second of the videos. Victoria, still defiant, walked in as if she were the aggrieved party. I want that flight attendant, Derek Sullivan, as a witness, she demanded. He saw how disruptive those children were. Elizabeth regarded her with a cool, professional gaze. Derek Sullivan has been suspended, pending termination. Victoria blinked. What? He was doing his job. He was discriminating against two children, Elizabeth stated flatly. Now, Ms. Hartwell, let's discuss your situation. She laid it out without emotion. Victoria Hartwell was permanently banned from Skyline Airways, her platinum status revoked. Her information had already been shared across a network of partner airlines. She would find it very difficult to fly with anyone for a very long time. Defiance curdled into panic. You can't do this. Do you know who I am? I'll sue this airline into the ground. Elizabeth leaned forward, her voice quiet but heavy with absolute certainty. Ms. Hartwell, this airline was founded by Marcus Thompson. He built Skyline on the principle of dignity for all passengers because he too faced discrimination. You violated everything he stood for. She held up a hand as Victoria opened her mouth to interrupt. Those two children you terrorized? They are Maya and Zara Thompson, Marcus's daughters. He left this airline to them in a trust when he died saving a family from a fire. Those children you threatened, they own this airline, Ms. Hartwell. The color drained from Victoria's face. Her mouth opened and closed, soundless. I didn't know, she finally whispered. And that, Elizabeth said, her voice like ice, is exactly the problem. You shouldn't have to know who people are to treat them with basic human decency. You saw two black children, and you decided they didn't matter. Now, you will face the consequences. In another room, Derek Sullivan faced a large video screen. He still didn't know the girls' identities. He just knew he was in trouble. The face of the board chairman, Richard Chen, appeared, his expression thunderous. "Mr. Sullivan," Richard began, his voice tight with rage, "do you know who the children in row 14 are?" "No, sir," Derek stammered. "Just two unaccompanied minors. I was trying to de-escalate a seating dispute." "They are Maya and Zara Thompson," Richard said, his voice shaking with emotion. "The daughters of Marcus Thompson, the founder of this airline, your employer. A hero who died saving others, who built this company because of the very same discrimination you allowed to happen to his children. You dismissed them. You threatened them. You sided with their abuser on their own father's airline." "I didn't know who they were," Derek pleaded, his voice cracking. "You shouldn't have to," Richard roared. "Every passenger deserves respect. Every child deserves protection. You failed at the most basic requirement of your job. You are terminated effective immediately." "Please, sir, I have a mortgage." "You made a choice," Richard said coldly. "Security will escort you out." The screen went dark. Meanwhile, a digital firestorm was raging. The videos had gone viral. Justice for Maya and Zara and # Marcus Thompson's daughters were trending worldwide. The story of the hero firefighter who built an airline on a dream of equality, only for his own children to face racism on it, captured the heart of the nation. Victoria's real estate company was buried under an avalanche of one-star reviews and angry calls. Her face and Derek's were symbols of a casual ugliness the world was tired of seeing. Back at the airport, away from the storm, Maya and Zara sat in a quiet room with Christine. They were still shaken, still processing. But they were safe now, wrapped in the quiet strength of the legacy their father had built. A legacy that had just protected them in a way they were only beginning to understand. Tears welled in Christine's eyes. For the past hour, she had been apologizing. For the flight attendant's cruelty, for the airline's failure, for a system that had not protected them. It was Maya, the quiet one, who finally broke the silence. Her voice was small, a fragile sound in the sterile room. "Did our dad know that people who worked here could be mean?" The question shattered Christine's composure. The tears fell. She knelt, bringing herself to their level. "Your father," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "built this airline on the belief that every single person deserves respect. He would be heartbroken that this happened to you. But sweetheart, he would be so incredibly proud of how you stood up for yourselves. You were brave, you were strong, you didn't let anyone silence you." Zara's eyes, red-rimmed and weary, met hers. "Our dad always said, treat people right, no matter what. That man, he treated us wrong." "You're absolutely right," Christine affirmed, "and he is facing consequences for it. Both of them are." Just then, a commotion erupted outside, raised voices, the sound of running footsteps. The door burst open. Dr. Angela Thompson, still in her hospital scrubs, rushed in with Richard Chen close behind her. Angela said nothing. She simply fell to her knees and swept her daughters into a fierce embrace, holding them as if she could shield them from the entire world with her arms alone. The three of them cried together, a storm of deep, wrenching sobs. "I'm so sorry," Angela whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." "Mom, we're okay," Zara managed, though her own voice trembled. "We stood up for ourselves, like Dad taught us." Richard Chen knelt beside them, his own eyes glistening. "Girls, I am so sorry. Your daddy trusted me to protect his airline, to protect everything he built. I failed you today." Zara pulled back slightly to look at him, her expression firm. "Uncle Richard, you didn't fail us. That lady failed us. That man failed us. You're the one fixing it." Maya, her small hand clutching the heart-shaped necklace at her throat, nodded. "Daddy would say, what matters is what you do after the mistake." A sound that was half a laugh and half a sob escaped Richard's lips. "That is exactly what Marcus would say." When they finally emerged from the private room, the gate area, still crowded with passengers from their flight, erupted in applause. People had refused to leave, waiting to know the girls were safe. Michael Chen was there. Jennifer Rodriguez was there. Dozens of strangers who had witnessed an injustice now stood in solidarity. They clapped, They cheered, some with tears streaming down their faces, others filming the moment justice began to unfold. Richard Chen stood at a hastily assembled podium, Angela and the twins beside him. His voice, amplified, carried across the terminal. Marcus Thompson founded Skyline Airways on a simple principle, that everyone deserves dignity. Today, his own daughters were denied that dignity on his airline. This is not just unacceptable, it is a betrayal of everything we stand for. We have zero tolerance for discrimination, from anyone. He announced Derek's immediate termination and Victoria's permanent ban from the airline. Then, he announced something more. In his honor, we are launching the Marcus Thompson Integrity Initiative. Every staff member, from the tarmac to the boardroom, will undergo retraining in our founder's core values. We will overhaul our policies to ensure that what happened today can never, ever happen again. The crowd roared its approval. Richard looked down at the twins. Would you like to say anything? Zara stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but carried a profound clarity. Our dad built this airline for everyone, not just for some people. Everyone. Maya took a deep breath and added, he'd want it to be better, so we're going to make it better. The applause that followed was deafening. These two 9-year-old girls had faced down ugliness with a courage that shamed it. They had honored their father's legacy not just with words, but with action. The consequences for those who had wronged them were swift and devastating. Within 48 hours, Victoria Hartwell was fired. Her face was everywhere, a viral symbol of entitlement. Her luxury real estate firm issued a statement about zero tolerance, and her career evaporated. She soon discovered she wasn't just banned from Skyline. Delta, United, American, one by one, the major airlines quietly added her to their no-fly lists. The ability to travel, a privilege she'd taken for granted, was gone. Then came the stories from former clients. The black couple she refused to show homes to in a wealthy suburb. The Hispanic family she'd steered away from a good school district. Lawsuits began to pile up like fallen leaves. Alone in her cavernous apartment, Victoria scrolled through an endless feed of public hatred, watching the life she had built crumble to dust. Derek Sullivan's fall was just as complete. Terminated from Skyline, he soon found his FAA flight attendant certification revoked. He was blacklisted, an industry pariah. Former colleagues came forward, revealing a long-hidden pattern of discriminatory behavior. He'd always dismissed complaints from minority passengers, always sided with white customers, always treated children of color with a cold suspicion. In a public statement, he wrote, "I thought I was doing my job. I realize now I was perpetuating harm. I have a lot to learn." He ended up working for minimum wage at an airport convenience store, a ghost haunting the place of his former power. Meanwhile, on a private charter arranged by the board, Maya and Zara finally made it to Atlanta to see their grandma Rose. When they arrived, she held them for a long time, saying nothing, simply letting them feel her strength. That evening, as twilight settled over the porch, she told them a story. "Your daddy faced this kind of hate too," she said softly. "That's why he built the airline, so no one else would have to." She told them of Marcus at 25, a young firefighter in his crisp dress uniform, excited for a training conference. At the airport, his ticket was flagged as fraudulent. Security was called. He was questioned for 2 hours while his flight departed without him. "They treated him like a criminal for trying to fly while black," Grandma Rose said, her voice heavy with the memory. He was so humiliated. But Marcus didn't just get angry, he got determined. He told me, "Mama, I'm going to build an airline where that never happens, where everyone is treated with dignity." The girls finally understood. It was never just about a stolen seat. It was about their father's entire reason for being. "Daddy built the airline for us," Maya whispered, "and for everyone like us." Back in Chicago, Skyline Airways was transforming. The Marcus Thompson Integrity Initiative launched with intensive, company-wide anti-bias training. Christine Morrison was promoted to Vice President of Passenger Services, tasked with implementing new protocols, an immediate response system for discrimination claims and special protections for vulnerable travelers. The board even asked Maya and Zara for their input. They suggested better communication with parents of unaccompanied minors, kindness training, and clearer rules to protect children's seats. 6 months later, Maya, Zara, and their mother flew again. Boarding the plane, the girls were visibly nervous. Their flight attendant, a warm professional man named Jamal Washington, greeted them. "Miss Thompson, girls, it's an honor to have you with us today." The twins shifted uncomfortably. Maya found her voice. "Can you just treat us like everyone else? That's what our dad would want." Jamal's smile was genuine. "That's exactly what I'll do," he said. "And I'll treat everyone else like they're the owner's kids too." During the flight, Zara noticed a young boy flying alone, his face pale with fear. She went and sat with him, showing him how to play a game on her tablet until his anxiety melted into a smile. The twins were turning their trauma into empathy. At that very moment, in the same terminal, Derek was restocking shelves in a newsstand. He saw Angela and the twins walk past, laughing and confident. A wave of shame washed over him. He wanted to apologize, to say something, but he knew he had lost that right forever. He simply watched them go, a family unburdened by him. In a sterile classroom across the city, Victoria sat in a court-mandated sensitivity training. The facilitator played a documentary about local heroes. Suddenly, Marcus Thompson was on the screen. Younger, in his firefighter's uniform, explaining why he started an airline. "I believe every person deserves to travel with dignity," he said. The film then cut to his funeral. The fire department honor guard, hundreds of crying employees, and two tiny 6-year-old girls placing flowers on their father's casket. For the first time, a wave of genuine remorse, cold and sharp, pierced through Victoria's self-pity. She hadn't just hurt two kids. She had desecrated a hero's legacy. 1 year after the incident, Skyline Airways held its annual memorial for Marcus. Maya and Zara, now 10, were invited to speak. Zara stood at the microphone. "Our dad started this airline because he believed in fairness," she said. "When that didn't happen to us, it would have been easy to give up on his dream. But that's not what he would have wanted." Maya stepped forward. "He would have wanted us to make it better. So every time you treat a passenger with respect, every time you stand up for someone, you are honoring our dad." As the entire company rose in a standing ovation, Richard Chen looked at the portrait of Marcus on the wall. "Your girls are carrying your torch, Marcus," he whispered, "and it's burning brighter than ever." Later that week, the twins visited the memorial at their father's fire station and placed flowers by his plaque. "We're protecting your dream, Dad," Maya said softly. Zara added, "We're making sure everyone flies with dignity, just like you wanted." Fire Chief Torres knelt beside them. "Your father built something to outlive him," he said, "and you two are making sure it stays true." Marcus Thompson built an airline, but in their fight for his principles, his daughters forged something far more enduring. A testament to the idea that courage, no matter how small, can reshape the world. It was a movement toward justice, a promise of dignity for all. That was his true legacy, and it would never be forgotten.